Namaste and welcome to the Explainer's India Brief. I'm your host, and today we're going to do things a little differently. We're not just going to rattle off a list of things that happened. No, we're going to connect the dots, we're going to find the hidden threads, and piece together the real story of the day. Because that's really what the news is, right? It's this huge, complicated, sometimes messy, but often pretty inspiring story about all of us. So our goal here is to look past those individual headlines and see the bigger picture. Think of it like a giant jigsaw puzzle. Every news item is one piece, and by the end of this explainer, we're going to see how they all snap together. So here's our game plan. This is the roadmap for today. We're going to start with the big machinery of power, and then we'll look at what happens when that machinery breaks down. From there, we'll get a little philosophical and dive into some deep questions about identity. Then we'll zoom way out to see India's role in the world, and we'll wrap things up with some genuine sparks of optimism. You'll see that organizing the day like this, it helps us spot the patterns that tell the real story of August 19th. All right, first up, governing a complex nation. This is where we look at the high-level chess moves, right? The big decisions being made in Parliament, the strategies that political parties are rolling out, and this is the important part, how those choices trickle all the way down to the local level. It's all about the laws that shape our lives and, let's be honest, the political theater that shapes how we see it all. Okay, so check this out. We've got a perfect example of political strategy in action. Over in Bihar, the opposition is making two very different moves, but they're both aiming for the exact same target. First, the India bloc is floating this idea of an impeachment motion against the chief election commissioner. At the same time, Rahul Gandhi is kicking off a Vote Adhikar Yatra. Now, let's be real, an impeachment is a legal long shot. It's probably not going to succeed. But that's not the point. It is powerful political theater. It's a huge public way to cast doubt on the credibility of the election commission. The Yatra does the same thing, just on the streets, with the people. So when you put them together, it's like this coordinated pincer movement, all designed to challenge the official story. And while the opposition is challenging the system, the government is busy trying to reshape it, and it's doing it in two really interesting different ways. First, there's a new bill on the table that wants to decriminalize 288 minor offenses. Think of this as a massive spring cleaning of old, outdated laws. The idea is that a simple paperwork mistake shouldn't land you in jail. It's common sense, right? At the very same time, the finance minister is setting the stage for a potential major overhaul of the GST system. It's a really fascinating contrast when you think about it. One policy is basically fixing the plumbing of the past, while the other is trying to draw up the blueprints for the future. And this brings us to that huge, vast distance between a policy dreamed up in Delhi and the reality on the ground. I mean, while the national conversation is all about big, abstract ideas like system-wide efficiency, let's zoom right into a village in Punjab, and suddenly things get really messy. A local panchayat has given 5 acres of common village land that belongs to everyone, to a private builder. And as you can imagine, it sparked a massive controversy about who really controls public resources. It's the perfect snapshot of the tension in governing India. Delhi is busy debating these grand, abstract reforms, while for people on the ground, a local decision can feel deeply personal and maybe even deeply unjust, which, of course, leads us to a pretty critical question. We can have all the grand plans, all the political strategies, and all the local resolutions in the world, but what happens when those big, neat plans collide with the absolute chaos of everyday life? What happens when the very systems we build to create order just break? And that brings us perfectly to our second section, when the system breaks. So here, we're shifting gears. We're moving away from the abstract world of policy and getting into the very concrete, very real consequences that we all face when the infrastructure we depend on, the stuff we can see and the stuff we can't, just can't handle the pressure. Let's start with a story that will feel painfully familiar to so many of us. Heavy monsoon rains lash Mumbai, and surprise, surprise, there's severe waterlogging. But here's the kicker. The absolute worst of the flooding was right next to a major junction where the city's municipal corporation had just spent a fortune building a brand new pumping station, a station designed specifically to prevent exactly this from happening. You can't make this stuff up. 130 crore rupees. Just let that number sink in for a second. That is the amount of money invested to solve this very problem. And yet, the outcome was exactly the same. The city turned into a giant swimming pool. Now, this isn't just a story about rain. It's a story about planning, about execution, and most importantly, about accountability. Because when you spend that much public money and the problem doesn't get better, the question that just screams out is, who was responsible? And this kind of system failure isn't just physical, it's digital too. Over in Delhi NCR, the Airtel network went down for hours. Thousands of people just cut off. It's such a powerful reminder of this quote. When the invisible infrastructure breaks, all those signals and satellites we completely take for granted, we are suddenly thrown back into the Stone Age. We just happen to have better phones in our pockets. The flooded streets of Mumbai and the silent phones in Delhi, they're telling the exact same story. Our modern world is incredibly, incredibly fragile. So from the failure of our physical systems, we're now going to turn inward. This next section, Who Are We Anyway, is all about the breakdowns and debates that are happening within society itself. These are stories about those really complex, deeply human questions of who belongs, who deserves to be protected, and what it even means to be a healthy society in the first place. Look at the Northeast. We've got two different stories that are basically asking the same fundamental question: who gets to draw the lines around a community? In Tripura, there's a growing demand to strip tribal women of their benefits if they dare to marry outside the community. That's a direct clash between an individual's right to choose and a community's sense of identity. At the same time, in Agartala, student groups are demanding the immediate eviction of illegal immigrants, arguing over scarce resources. Both of these are intense conflicts over defining the boundaries of us versus them. And this big question of who we are, it also forces us to confront some really tough balancing acts. Take Kerala, where a rise in rabies cases has ignited this fierce, emotional debate between public safety on one side and animal welfare on the other. How do you protect people, especially the most vulnerable, while still being humane? Then you have Goa. Following some tragic student deaths, there's a big push to teach stress management in colleges. And that raises a really profound question for our education system. Is teaching students how to succeed more important than teaching them how to handle failure? Both of these stories are forcing us to decide what a healthy society truly, truly values. All right, so from those deep internal debates about our society, let's pull the camera way, way back. Let's zoom all the way out to the global stage. In this section, India navigates the world. We're looking at how our nation is trying to find its way through this incredibly complex web of international diplomacy, shifting alliances, and of course, conflict. What we're seeing on the world stage right now are these two parallel tracks running at the same time. There's slow, careful diplomacy, and then there's sudden, brutal destruction. On one hand, you have high-level talks, like PM Modi's phone call with President Putin. You have alliance strategy meetings between the US, Europe, and Ukraine. You even have this tiny glimmer of hope for a ceasefire in Gaza. But while all that talking is happening, the brutal reality on the ground just keeps going. In Ukraine, Russian drone strikes have just killed 10 civilians. 3 of them were children. It's really the tragic paradox of international affairs, isn't it? That even as all these high-level peace talks are underway, the brutal reality on the ground continues. Diplomacy and conflict, they just operate on completely different timelines. And this is just such a sobering, heartbreaking reminder of that fact. Okay, after looking at the complexities of governing, the failures of our systems, and the harsh realities of global conflict, it's pretty easy to feel a bit heavy, a bit overwhelmed. So for our final section today, we are going to completely change focus. Let's look at the sparks of a brighter future. These are the stories of innovation, of national pride, and just simple human goodness. What's so powerful here is that you can see a positive impact happening at every single level of society. It's like a crescendo of good news. So at the very top, at the national level, you have astronaut Shubhanshu Shukla meeting the Prime Minister, a moment of collective pride for the whole country. Then you move down to systemic innovation, Varanasi installing solar panels between the railway tracks. How cool is that? And finally, you get right down to the power of the individual.
One man, Ashwani Thapa, using social media reels to raise 10 lakh rupees for a remote school in Sikkim. Just incredible.
This is what you'd call the democratization of philanthropy, and it's happening right before our eyes. It means that with the tools we have today, a single person with a phone and a real, authentic story can mobilize hundreds of people to make a genuine difference. It's such a powerful reminder that change doesn't just flow from the top down. So often, it bubbles up from the passion and the good heart of a single citizen.
So let's bring it all home. Let's put that puzzle together. The story of August 19th was about the endless, complex puzzle of governance, stretching from the halls of Delhi to a tiny village. It was about the shocking fragility of the systems we take for granted every single day. It was about the tough, uncomfortable questions we have to ask ourselves about who we are. It was about that delicate, dangerous tightrope walk of global diplomacy. And yet, woven through all of that, there were these persistent, undeniable sparks of hope and innovation. That is the picture that emerged when we connected all the dots.
If you want to get this daily explainer every morning, make sure to follow us on Spotify and YouTube. We break down the story behind the headlines for you every single day at 8 a.m. And as always, we'll leave you with a final question to chew on. Looking at this whole mosaic we've pieced together today, what's the one connection you saw that changes how you'll read the news tomorrow? We sincerely hope that by bringing you just the facts and connecting the dots, we've given you a clearer picture. Thanks for joining us for The Explainer. We'll be back tomorrow morning to do it all again. Namaskar.